It is no secret, guys, that the FX3 is a bona fide cinema camera. So much so that I've been using it on commercial productions for the past couple of years, mixing it with Alexa Minis, Alexa Mini LFs, Reds, other Sony cameras, and the results have been amazing. So the reason why I'm making this video is because I still come across a lot of people where when I mention the FX3 as like a B camera or maybe even A camera, they're like, I don't know, man, like, are you sure? Can we match it to an Alexa? Can we match it to this other camera? And I promise you, this video will show you how easy it is. So as long as you have good lighting, the exposure is pretty much the same, the lenses match, I think that's a pretty good recipe for matching cameras. So first what we're gonna do is we're gonna go outside, we're gonna shoot a few scenes side by side with the Alexa Mini and the FX3 and show you what they look like coming out of camera to see the differences. Then we're gonna take them in post and we're gonna color match them and show you how easy it is to match these two cameras together. And of course, we're gonna talk about why you might wanna use one camera over the other, or maybe you might want to have both on set. We're going to try to keep as many things as consistent as possible. Even though the Alexa Mini has NDs built into it, just for color and testing purposes, we're going to be using the Firecrest ND, which I think is really neutral. And for the lens, we're going to use a Zeiss standard speed 50mm. This actually covers full frame. So even though this is a Super 35 camera and the FX3, which is what we're shooting on now, is a full frame, this actually covers both. So we're going to be able to just swap the lenses without having anything change except for the field of view, just because, you know, obviously this is a Super 35 and that's a full frame. We're going to set both cameras to 800 ISO, 2398 frames per second, and then we're going to set the aperture based on this light meter. So let's go ahead and get started. So for this first scene here, I thought we would go against this brick wall because the thing that I really like to see is how the cameras treat the reds, just because it is closer to skin tone. So I really like to see what the reds do in a particular test. One other thing I like to test for are the blues. And so ARRI really has the color science down when it comes to blues, especially sky. I've noticed that other camera manufacturers, usually when you put like a 709 on, it tends to skew towards like a purplish blue type of color. It's not really the prettiest thing in the world. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the blues render on the cameras and how we can match them. All right, so here we are in the shade. So color balance is pretty much should stay the same, but I just want to see how the shadows and the shade affects the skin tones and all the other colors around it. And in this scenario, we're going to be under a little bit of mixed lighting. There's a kind of a tungsten-y fluorescent looking thing back there with some natural light coming in. So let's see how that looks. So for post, what we're gonna do is we're gonna be as consistent as possible. We're gonna choose the log space that each camera was in and then do Rec 709 as the output. So that way we have a constant base for what we're matching against. So let's take a look at this first image here. Again, there's a green tint on the Alexa Mini, and I think that's just something with the ARRI sensors. They tend to skew a little bit more green than some of the other cameras, especially when the sensors get older. I've just noticed that, and other people have talked to me about that as well, and they've all kind of had similar experiences. And so that's something that, you know, we're probably just gonna match the FX3 to, just so we have a baseline. I'm just gonna turn on these two nodes. It's pretty straightforward. I think the main thing that I shifted here was the blue, because the blue coming out of the Sonys is a little bit, again, a little bit more, I would say more towards the indigo purple side. So we're gonna push those back more towards cyan, which the Alexas do really well. Second scene, very, very similar. You'll just notice that, you know, there's a little bit of a tint here, so we're just gonna match it back, but essentially it's very similar to the other scene. Now this scene here was a little bit tricky because you can start seeing the shadows in the Sony FX3 have a little bit of a magenta tint, a kind of like in-between area. For the most part, the rest of it looks really similar. So this last one right here, I think really shows the power of the Alexa sensor, the ALEV3, because in a mixed lighting scenario, you can pretty much record it on the Alexa Mini, capture it, and then in post, it's very, very accurate. Whereas in the footage here, I'm just noticing that the Sony just really tends to oversaturate some of those oranges in the fluorescent color there. And it just looks a little bit less natural than the Alexa. But again, it's fairly easy to correct, and here's what we did here. And one last thing I wanted to mention is that you can definitely use transform LUTs, so you don't have to do this manually, whether it's something like the Phantom LUTs or Juan Malara's LUTs, where they basically take the color space and the color will essentially try to match as closely as possible to Alexa. So again, you don't have to do that manual matching on your own. All right, so I hope that shows you how easy it is to match the two cameras. It may not be an exact match, but you know, really when you're putting them side by side in a blind test, it's gonna be hard pressed to tell which camera is which, to be honest with you. So, $1,000,000 question, why would I choose an Alexa Mini or any other high-end cinema camera if the FX3 is pretty much just as good? The first thing is color straight out of the box. Typically, the higher-end cinema cameras, they have the color really dialed in. So, you know, I've done this a lot where I've shot something and I've handed it off to a post house and I never get to have an opinion on the color or anything like that. And a lot of times they'll just throw like, you know, some contrast adjustments on there, like a Rec 709 LUT, and just push it out. And some of the higher end cinema cameras, the color is very accurate, and so like, you know, it's gonna look decent. So it gives the footage a fighting chance if you don't have an opportunity to get involved in the color grade. The second thing is the codecs. So the FX3, although it can do ProRes RAW kind of into an external monitor, I mean, the reality of the situation is ProRes 444 on Alexa Mini or Alexa Mini LF is a really great starting point. Whether it's 444 or 422 HQ, it's just a lot easier for some post houses to handle. And I've actually been told that by some post producers before, where they're like, you know what, we just prefer to have everything in ProRes just because like our computer systems can just handle it a lot easier, especially when you're pumping out stuff for social media where you have like 100 deliverables, right? You know, if you're doing like one video edit, it's probably not gonna matter, but if you're doing like 100 edits, that's so many exports, that's so many like different versions you're showing to the client, that adds up over time. So for some people, they might have to transcode the footage into something else. And so, you know, a lot of the times, the codec actually really matters. All right, so if you've had doubts about the FX3 being a viable option for a commercial project, I hope this video put those fears to rest, because it's a great option in my opinion. Really easy to match to other cameras. Again, as you know, the lighting is super important, the lensing is super important, and you know, at this point, a lot of people are saying the cameras are just really data collection tools. And because the technology is so good right now, as long as you have those other elements in place, they're all a really good match. But again, you know, talking about some of the advantages, it just depends on, you know, you got to read the room. Is it that type of project where you have all the bells and whistles and you have the opportunity to use the best tools available? Or, you know, if you're being really scrappy, you know, you can get away with these smaller tools and they're going to give you amazing results. All right, if you have any questions about the workflow or any questions at all, feel free to post them below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. All right, guys, peace.